Hello viewers, and welcome back to Exhaust Notes Australia. I'm Dan and this is an electric one, the BMW i4 eDrive35. BMW introduced this car in Australia at least to undercut the luxury car tax with its cut-off of 89,000 or thereabouts. But funnily enough, when I've gone to configure this car, it's always been from 93,000. So I'm not sure how that exactly works, or if it even works anymore. The one that we're in at the moment is in Skyscraper Grey, which is a metallic colour. And with metallic paint comes the $3,000 enhancement pack, which also includes heated front seats and the panoramic sunroof. So all up, this car as we're testing it is $96,850 drive away if you're in Sydney. And that still seems to be pretty decent for a BMW, particularly an electric one. Now the eDrive35 is sitting at the bottom of the i4 lineup. You can get an eDrive40, which, just like the 35, is also a rear-wheel drive car. That starts from 111,000, or you can go for the performance spec all-wheel drive M50, which is upwards of 144,000 or thereabouts. Even though this is probably what you would consider a base spec or the entry level, the eDrive35 has 210 kilowatts and 400 newton meters of torque going to the rear axle. For that price jump up to the eDrive40, you're looking at 250 kilowatts and 430 newton meters, and again going to the rear axle. And then for all the performance with the M50, that's 400 kilowatts and 795 newton meters going to all four wheels. The eDrive35 has the smallest battery of the range at only 70.2 kilowatt hours, and so that does affect your range offering, but you get about 430 on the WLTP. I've been seeing nearly 400 from just the average usage that this car's been through and what I've used it for. I've literally just filled this one up before the review, and we're showing an electric range of 375 kilometers at a 99% charge. So it varies. I'm in Eco Pro at the moment, although we're about to enter a motorway, so let's try the sport mode and get some of those acoustic sounds. I know some people don't like the fake sounds, but heck, we're in an electric car, so let's embrace that.
There aren't many direct competitors for the eDrive35. As while cars like the BYD Seal Premium and Tesla Model 3 exist, the online consensus was that not only are these cars in the $60,000 to $70,000 range, not many people would be cross-shopping a BMW against those. BMW's traditional competitors in Audi and Mercedes don't offer a direct competitor here in Australia, as the e-tron GT and the EQE are very different cars and well into six-figure money. Our feeling is that the i4 exists to offer established BMW owners an electric alternative, and it's interesting to note that the eDrive35 at $96,000 actually comes in cheaper than the equivalent petrol-powered 4 Series, based on similar power figures at least.
So even for the entry-level electric BMW, it still has quite a lot to offer. I do like these leather seats. They're sport seats in this particular version at the front. They're heated as well, as I mentioned. Just as soon as I climbed into this car, it just felt that little bit more premium. It had that proper BMW feel to it that we've come to expect. It has not disappointed in any way from any preconceptions of being a BMW. Maybe aside from the fact that the indicators work, or it could just be the fact that I'm using them. I like the format. This is a 4-door or a 5-door fastback. It can amply fit a small family. There's enough room in the back, but probably not for really tall or big adults on longer distances. But the front is quite comfortable. It's simple, it's elegant, but it's a nice place to just sit and just to drive. We do have nice navigation wheel here, but I do find that I'm using the touchscreen all the more, and all the fingerprinted goodness that provides. Of course, there's good brake regen on this, which allows you to slow down and stop pretty much without hitting the brake pedal. It's a different way of driving and learning how to drive, and of course you've got to remember when you go to a more conventional car that they're not going to do that, so just keep that in mind. But it's a pretty good system, and again, that does affect your range too, in that you can extend the range. We took it for a road trip up into the Blue Mountains just the other day, and we were finding that quite well, especially as we were coming down the hill. So you know, being based on the 4 Series Gran Coupé and just having that sort of Grand Tourer kind of format to it, the electric version sort of is living up to that as well. It's really easy to drive. It's fun. It feels fun to drive, and we're going to try and explore that a little bit in this drive now, because even though we have taken it on some trips, we haven't taken it for a bit of a blast yet, because you know, BMWs are drivers' cars, and this feels like it should be, even though it's an electric car. Even though it weighs 2 tons, it doesn't feel it. It's actually hiding that really well, and it just feels like a normal car. And another beautiful thing about it is that it looks like a normal car. And I've done some reading online about people who have considered the i4 or bought the i4, and that's one of the things that they said, is that it doesn't look like it's from the future or trying to be from the future. It just looks like any other car. And if you see another 4 Series, there's very little to distinguish this from those. You do have the grills, which are covered up at the front. And are they still controversial? Are we still not a fan of those? I'm not against them, but I'm not quite in love with the front of this car just yet. I do think the rear 3/4 angle is probably its better look. The lines are just a bit nicer from that point of view. But I don't think it's exactly an ugly car. Obviously, being an EV, it doesn't need those big, huge tombstone grills out the front. But in keeping it in line with the petrol version, it kind of makes sense that it still retains that. The only other giveaways, and as I was informed by a friend of mine, are the blue rings around the BMW roundels, which indicate that this is an electric vehicle. That and the i4 badge and the fake exhaust outlets in the rear bumper, which I know some people won't be too much of a fan of, but again, it's in keeping with its petrol counterpart. On the inside, the interior doesn't feel too compromised, and I know I said that about a previous electric car. Obviously, there are batteries in the floor, and I think the floor still has been raised a little, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the car too much. We still have the a bit of a hump in between the rear seats for the where the drivetrain would have gone for the petrol version. Obviously, we don't need it here, but they're not going to change that in between. And in the back, we have a 470-litre boot. You might be surprised to know that that is the same size boot as the petrol version. Fold down the rear seats and we open up to 1290 litres, so it's fairly decent sized, and you get the benefit of the fact it's a lift back, so it makes putting luggage or whatever you need to put in the back there really easy. Unfortunately, being that this is a car derived from a petrol version, we don't have any storage under the front, under the bonnet, the fruit or the frunk, whatever you're calling them. Well, obviously that's where the combustion engine would have sat, and in this case it's just large plastic covers to go over probably where all the batteries are now sitting. It's fine, but obviously on your BYD Seals and your Tesla 3s, Tesla Model Ys, you're going to have a bit of a storage area there for your cables or whatever you want to put. In the rear, so underneath all that boot space, we don't have a spare tyre, but we do have a small cargo area for all the cables, so that they can sit in there, and yeah, a tyre repair kit otherwise. Being a Gran Coupe, we have the frameless doors, which is quite nice, although I do think perhaps they attribute to a little bit of road noise when we're going along. I think that's just something that frameless doors seem to do. No real biggie, just something to be aware of. And I think I mentioned earlier, it's just quite airy in here. We have a fair bit of glass, we can see around really easily. Open up the sunroof and we just get that bit more light into the cabin. It's been a bit dreary these last few days, so that's been quite welcomed. Now, some of the quirks. The aircon seems to reset to what's called automatic recirculation, so it determines when to recycle the air, and a bit earlier on in this drive that was a little annoying as I could smell the exhaust fumes of cars around me. I would much prefer it remembered that I'd like it to be on recirculate, but it doesn't, so you just have to go into the menu and fix that up. Being an electric car, if you keep the key in your pocket, as soon as you pretty much exit, the car will turn off, which doesn't sound like a problem, but if you've got family or whatever sitting in the car and you just want to leave it on and have the radio continue to play and the aircon going, that's not going to happen. So you have to leave the key in the car to do that. I know it sounds like a no-brainer, but I think a lot of us can probably keep the keys in our pockets, and so that could be just a little bit of an issue there. Otherwise, there's not really been too much to complain about with this car. It drives quite smooth. It drives as you'd expect. There's no... I have had it in the wet pick up the wrong lane marking again, and I mean, I'm not going to blame the car for that. It's again down to Australian and Sydney roads where they've painted over a line due to some roadworks, and the car has tried to follow the line that's been painted over. I mean, the fact that it still detected it shows that the kind of job that was done. So just again, something to be aware of. And I did note that the car has a 4-star ANCAP rating, and one of the failings was with regard to lane assist. So, perhaps there's something in that, but it did score high on the adult and child occupant protection. So I don't think you'd have to worry too much. A 4-star ANCAP rating is still a decent rating in my mind. When it comes to options for this car, you only really have the $3,000 enhancement pack, which, as mentioned, includes the sunroof, the heated seats, and metallic paint. That means that Alpine White is your no-cost option paint color. But if you want the sunroof from that, then you might as well go for the metallic paint, which then kind of becomes a no-cost option in a weird interpretation of it. But at least when compared to things like the petrol version, where basically everything becomes an option, this still becomes a pretty decent alternative.
No-cost option colours include black and Alpine White, while for metallic colours there's Mineral White Metallic, Sunset Orange, Skyscraper Grey, San Remo Green, Aventurin Red 3, and Black Sapphire.
For the interior, we have the black leather here, but you can also choose what's called a cognac, which is kind of a nice tan. And if I'm honest, I'd probably option that up, as much as having a light coloured interior probably isn't conducive when you have kids. I think it would just lift it and, look that little bit more classy, which should maybe could look quite nice. Another thing you'd come to expect from a BMW and something at this sort of level is that we do have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is really handy. Just get in the car and go, pretty much, and all your music stream through the infotainment screen. There is a QI wireless charger in the center console here. I've found that after a short amount of time, will often get a warning that the phone's getting too hot, and at that point it will stop charging the phone, which is fair enough. But when your phone's being used to do maps and your music, well, you'll find that your phone's going to run out of battery really quick when it's sitting there and not charging. So yeah, I don't know if that's something just for my phone. It's not been an issue in other cars. It could just be that where the phone sits in this cubby, it's quite it's almost insulated, if you like, in there, because it's pretty cozy. So maybe there's just not enough air circulation to cool it down. It's just something I've noticed. But yeah, results may vary. I have a Google Pixel phone, so maybe it is just something related to that. So we have a 10 speaker audio system in here. I've found that it's okay. It doesn't seem to have just some of the clarity that I've come to appreciate in other premium cars, but I'm kind of remembering this isn't the most premium i4 that we can get, so perhaps that's part of it. If you do crank any of the levels, like when I picked this car up, the bass was cranked all the way up. Yeah, don't do that. Any audiophile would know that anyhow, but it just really muddied the quality of anything I was listening to, and it was awful. Yeah, there was no balance there at all. With everything reset, the system is pretty decent. I just feel there's a little bit of room for improvement there. Another thing to note, pretty much like the lane keep assist, picking up the wrong lines on the road, something that's not the fault of the car again, but it can on motorways pick up signs that aren't exactly meant for us. And again, that comes down to the fact that in Australia they'll put a million signs up and expect you to know which one you're looking at. So when we're going through the mountains and there's a sign about trucks having a reduced speed limit, the car doesn't know that, so it sees a 60 sign and in an 80 zone will tell us that it's a 60 zone. Thankfully, it doesn't have any of those annoying beeps to alert us to that and remind us that we're going over a speed limit that it's detected. There's just a subtle reminder in the nice head-up display or on the instrument cluster in the dash. Let's see if we can have a good run up here. I'm going to throw it into sport, so let's get those noises back, and we're going to climb the mountain and see how we go. It is a nice part of the world here. All right, chuck it in. Okay, so the wheels can still break traction a little bit, and it's going to let you have a little bit of fun. Nice to know. Let's not do that too crazy. It is a bit wet. Tight. Right, okay. Bit better. So it is a really different sensation to a petrol car, of course, but still feel engaged. Not bad, it's holding on pretty well, and it's still comfortable too, which is what you want. Regen helps too, interestingly. So again, it's that change of how your driving style is, but the regen really helps in those decelerating for the turns. But it's really done well there. I'm impressed. So it's not the quickest BMW, but it certainly can get going. Oh yeah! For the entry level and for an electric vehicle, this i4 eDrive35 will do 0 to 100 in 6 seconds. I mean, if you jump up to the eDrive40, sure, you'll do it a little quicker, But does 0.3 of a second make all that much difference to you? Maybe it does. It still pushes you back in the seat, but it's not like warp drive, I suppose. And I guess that comes down to the fact that we're only powering the rear wheels. It's still fun though. So we've seen how it can handle on twisty roads. We've seen how it can go in a straight line. I mean, I think it ticks the boxes as a driver's car that just so happens to be electric. And as I said before, I do think that this is a good way of getting people into the BMW brand who might be a bit environmentally conscious. It doesn't look too out there. It looks and drives like a BMW should. And that's, I think, what people really want from this sort of car, and if they're considering this sort of thing. So I think the BMW are onto something here. Certainly in Australia, considering that Audi and Mercedes don't really have a car in this category for those who want an EV. But what do you think? If you were going to get into the EV market, would you consider a BMW i4? Would you consider the eDrive35, or would you go up to the 40 or maybe the M50 for that fair bit more money, I got to admit? I think given where it's priced and how it's targeted, I think this is pretty good. BMW offer a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty with the i4. The battery is protected for 8 years or up to 160,000 kilometers. You can purchase a 6-year service inclusive basic plan from about $1,980. I guess the other important things to think of with an EV is charge times. BMW say that you can charge this from 10 to 80% in about 32 minutes. And in the time that I've had it, I don't doubt that actually. I've only charged it for an hour at a time, and I've managed to get up to 97, 99% reasonably easily. On your normal wall plug, say if you were charging it at home, it'd be about 7 or 8 hours to get it to full, and I guess that's to be expected if you don't have a fast charger. In the purchase of these cars, you can opt to buy a BMW wall charger for your home, but also included in purchase is a subscription to the ChargeFox charging network, which is pretty handy, I reckon. As long as there are ChargeFox chargers near you, which, depending where you live, may or may not be the case. So a big thank you to BMW Australia for letting me have their car, and just the experience in going to get the car for this review. You're not just buying the car, you're buying into an experience, and BMW are certainly making sure that they're up there and getting noticed. A big thank you to Exhaust Notes Australia for letting me review the car for them. I've had a lot of fun. But do get onto all our socials. We are on X, or Twitter, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and probably a whole bunch of others. And you can find all our articles there, all our written ones. I'll have a written article for this car and all the others I've reviewed. So do get on there, get onto our YouTube channel for all the cool reviews that myself and the others are doing for Exhaust Notes Australia. Go hit those like buttons. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out, because we really love what we're doing here, and we hope that you enjoy it too. So a big thanks for watching, guys. I'm gonna have some fun with this car while I still can, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.